The border curbs imposed by China have impacted rural population in Nepal, particularly those living near the front line. With crisis of food, healthcare and essential supplies, the life and livelihood of the villagers are at stake. Our correspondent Saloni Murarka brings you this report from Nepal.
These villagers live on the Nepal-China border in Botkola rural municipality of Nepal. They are dependent on Tibetan markets for their daily supplies and everyday needs. But ever since the COVID lockdown in 2020, they have been facing a shortage of food grain and other essentials, as China closed the border during the pandemic and is yet to reopen it. Botkola rural municipality is in northern Nepal along the China border. The last 1 year has been particularly bad, as acute shortage of food threatens existence. Unemployment has become another concern, as Nepali settlements along the China border are heavily dependent on the Tibetan market. The shutdown of the border by China has pushed Nepali villagers into a food crisis and unemployment. The Ministry of Internal Affairs and Law of Koshi Province provided 90 quintals of rice for distribution among the affected residents. Various organizations and individuals also offered support by supplying food to the people of the affected area.
Botkola municipality shares a border with a small village in Tibet. In my municipality, market and daily supplies are located far away. Due to the shutdown of the China border since the COVID pandemic, villages along the border are facing a shortage of food. We can say that the day border was shut down, a food crisis began in the villages of Nepal, because Botkola municipality is dependent on the market of its neighbor, China. People are dependent on their northern neighbors for their daily earnings.
The chairperson told WION that last week a virtual meeting was held with Tibetan officials. The local unit requested them to reopen the border and resume daily business. Concerns were raised about COVID cases, and an agreement was reached to set up help desks at border points. However, it is unlikely that China will open the border anytime soon. China occasionally shut down the border with Nepal unannounced, citing COVID-19. Over the past several years, Nepal's exports to China have dwindled, leading to a massive trade deficit in trade between the two countries. As a result, the ratio of exports to China compared to imports from the northern neighbor plunged to just 0.3% in the last fiscal year of 2021 to 22, from as high as 1% in the fiscal year 2018 to 2019.
Small villages in Nepal along the China border have been hit by the food crisis, and there's an increase in unemployment. This is when the small villages in Nepal are heavily dependent on the Tibetan market and are not getting access to it due to the border restrictions placed by the Chinese government. It's been over 3 years now, and China had closed down the borders with Nepal during the COVID-19 pandemic and is yet to resume. Nepal Prime Minister himself, Pushpa Kamal Dahal, had earlier requested China to give a better and easy access to the Chinese market and therefore put efforts to reduce the widening trade deficit between the two countries. China has on occasions been placing restrictions on the Nepal-China border, affecting the trade between the two countries. Saloni Murarka for WION World is one in Kathmandu, Nepal.